And we're live. Welcome. I'm Eleanor Slamba, one half of Collaboration Superpowers, here for virtual coffee with Jurgen Appelo and San Francisco. We have a special bonus today to make up for some disappointed viewers at the last hour, and we have Chicago here represented in the same virtual coffee. So Chicago and San Francisco together in one hangout, and Jurgen, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Eleanor. So we have two of my favorite cities joining us in this hangout, and this is all in preparation for the book tour that leads me through the United States as well, but also other countries in the world. And I have similar questions to everyone who is joining us in various hangouts. Oops, I see that. Amy is briefly dropping out and returning. All right, we're still struggling a bit with the Hangout technology, but we're pulling through, I think. So let's start with Erik first. Erik, you're from Chicago or the wider surroundings, and why don't you introduce yourself briefly? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. My name is Erik Weber. I am the director of the Agile practice at a company called Centair, and we do software consulting and coaching other companies in the area on Agile techniques and management techniques.
All right, thank you for joining. And we have Amy. Are you with us again, Amy?
Yes, I'm back.
Hello, Amy. Awesome. Yes, you briefly dropped out. Yes? Yep. So why don't you introduce yourself briefly?
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Amy Lightholder, and for the past 7 years, I've been a Scrum Master and an Agilist. I currently work as a consultant. I've consulted at gigantic multinationals like Gap and Autodesk, and small, scrappy startups that you've probably never heard of. And I currently live in the Haight-Ashbury district of San Francisco.
Okay, awesome, and thank you too for joining us. So I have a couple of questions. I repeat the same questions wherever I go, whether it's the United Kingdom or Bulgaria or Sweden or Germany. Now it's the turn for USA. And the first question is, what is happening over there? What is happening in San Francisco, Amy, in terms of organizational transformation? Can you share us some interesting latest stories or developments?
Well, I'm sure everybody has already heard that San Francisco is in the midst of another boom, and things are really crazy here in the city. The big Agile thing going on right now is the lean movement. Suddenly the whole world knows that if you want a startup, the way to do it is to use the Erik Weber's pioneered lean startup approach, and you come to San Francisco and there's like seriously like a startup on every corner, and everyone's doing one from home, you know, in addition to their day jobs. We have a couple of, you know, organizational transformation places here. The big names are ThoughtWorks and Big Visible.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So, Erik Weber's book Lean Startup is quite famous in other parts of the world as well. But I believe I can believe that it is particularly well known in the startup center of the world, which is probably Silicon Valley. Yes. They're probably all pivoting all the time over there around you.
Yes, they are. There is a lot of pivoting going on. I had a Facebook friend who had started out as her startup had started out as people would write reviews and get of sales. You know, she had this big, like, you know, consumer focused thing, and she ended up pivoting to a service that tracks startup growth. It's called Mattermark. She has ended up evolving these benchmark metrics to predict whether a startup is going to take off or not. And it just kind of came up accidentally by tracking her lean analytics from her customer funnel.
Wow.
And she blogged about it the whole time. Yeah, Danielle
Okay.
Morrow.
Okay, that's interesting. So
Yeah.
I'll get to you in a moment, Eric. But first, I want to dig into this lean startup issue with one additional question for Amy. So, do you think that there's the perfect match between what lean startup is offering to startups and what Agile has been preaching for software development companies in general, or is there a mismatch somewhere? Do you see what do you see from your perspective?
Well, in relevance to what? In relevance to the Agile Manifesto, and if so, which parts of it?
Well, there's the Agile Manifesto. If anyone's asked what is Agile, then I would point to the Agile Manifesto and say, well, it's there. That is for me what Agile is. And I think the Lean Startup perhaps has added something that may not be covered by the Agile Manifesto. But I was just wondering what your opinion is on that, what your experience in Silicon Valley.
Well, from my point of view, what's driving the lean startup is new technologies. Agile has always emphasized a tight loop between the customer and the developer and the development team. And in the past, you had to filter this through your product owner, or your customer was the client who had hired you to do the software. When the Agile Manifesto was written, it was just simply not possible to track what end users were doing. And now it's possible to track the behavior and response of end users to a very, very fine degree, including where they are on the page, where they stop a reading if they are reading a blog. And what Lean Startup has done is that it's leveraged the Agile feedback loop principles, sort of like Agile for business, on top of the Agile for development, because I feel like traditional Agile is really about process and specifically the development process, whereas Lean Startup had a lot of expansion in the business process.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. So it applies similar principles to the business model, the principles of short feedback loops that we already knew in the production on the production side of the company, and I think even increase the speed there. Indeed, as you say, because technologies allows it nowadays.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, right, fascinating stuff. Eric, what have you seen in terms of organizational transformation? What are the stories from Chicago and wider areas around?
Sure. So Chicago certainly doesn't have the same startup scene as San Francisco, but we do have some of the startup scenes here. There's a gigantic building in Chicago that's one of the biggest incubators with people that are there to help coach and help startups and founders along. But that's just a small portion of, I think, what you would see in San Francisco. Really what we're seeing here in Chicago and really all over the Midwest is the start of large traditional Midwestern kind of slow to change organizations finally creeping up that agile curve, finally getting to the point where they can't afford to keep operating the same way that they did 10 or 20 years ago, and they're seeing some of their competitors in other parts of the world start to eat their lunch, and the appetite for change is really ripe now in the Midwest.
All right. Okay. Well, that sounds good. I've actually been there a couple of times, in Cleveland once and Columbus twice, Chicago a few times. So it's not like there's nothing happening. I know from my experience. But you say it's the Midwest is a bit lagging behind the west of the U.S. in agile transformation, agile adoption.
In a general way, yeah. Where companies around here are typically a little bit more conservative. That said, there are really some shining examples of companies that have transformed top to bottom. I was at a company a few weeks ago talking with their board of directors at a large bank who were interested enough in how how IT used Agile and some of these techniques in IT to transform how they were doing things, that they were interested enough in learning more about how this could apply in other parts of the organization. So there are large companies now that are scaling this up and figuring out how to do this in more than just software. And there's a lot of different things coming together, like Lean Startup, like Management 3.0, all kind of melding together, and companies are trying to figure this out on the whole.
Okay, all right. And when I think Silicon Valley and the Bay Area, I obviously think tech as industry. What is common for the Midwest as types of companies that you find there?
Yeah, common in this area are healthcare, life sciences, finance, not so much trading finance, but all the other arms. So the commodities arm is based in Chicago, and a lot of insurance companies are based in the Midwest. And then industrial and manufacturing. Even some of the most interesting companies to work with in this area are manufacturing clients, because they're at that point now where they realize that they are to a software company. They're not.
All right. Yeah. So everyone is
They
becoming a software company, indeed. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So good stuff. And I understand. I can understand that the manufacturing and financial industries are a bit more conservative in terms of their business culture. It's the same all over the world, basically, where the media companies and the tech companies tend to be the weird guys, and the banks and the manufacturing industries are a bit running behind, but eagerly listening to what the others are doing. Amy, what are the main obstacles that you see from your work in organizational transformation in the Bay Area? I'm sure there are still battles to be fought.
Yes, well, whenever the same thing happens on a personal level and on a corporate level, that when you learn about a new tool and you realize how wonderful and powerful this tool can be, like, say, Agile, you enter it with a great deal of enthusiasm. And then once you begin applying it, you uncover a great deal of work that needs to be done. And then you are perhaps a bit less enthusiastic. So listening to Erik describe the scene in Chicago, it sounds a lot like the scene in San Francisco in 2012, when large organizations had seen the Agile concepts as proven winners in smaller companies and were watching other companies eat their lunch and say, this waterfall process that we're using is just, it's very inefficient, it's not working for us, we're falling behind, we're old, we need to get up to speed. And there was this tremendous boom in business for the Agile consultants that I knew. And I used to get several pings a week for local gigs, come and help us do an Agile transformation. And now what I'm seeing is still several pings a week, but they're from places like Chicago or Illinois, Ohio, New Hampshire, Virginia. It's blooming in the Midwest the way that it used to bloom in San Francisco, whereas in San Francisco they've been trying to do their Agile transformation for a while, and they're running into the two barriers which I have seen over and over again, which are inertia. Okay, so you bring Agile into a large organization, and large organizations tend to have people who have been there for a long time, unlike a startup. And people are in these organizations because they want their life to be more or less the same. They want stability. So they have habits, and they have ways of doing things, and they have networks of relationships that they've built up over the years. And if you are going to change that, you have an enormous amount of inertia trying to get this company moving. And you're going to get a response at first, but then things are going to slow down. The second barrier is the response to this slowdown, which is disillusionment. It's not uncommon for a large company to have a management epiphany, so to speak, every 5 years or so, that is not very well thought out or implemented, often because people are unwilling to make the investment that is necessary to make these things a success, or they don't really talk to their people. So they expect the line workers or the individual people at their desks to change their lives, to cooperate with this initiative, but they don't spend enough time talking and listening to those people on the impact or the effort that is going to be required. And so, if you have a corporate culture where you're not listening to your people who are actually doing the work, then what you get at the management level is yes sir, yes ma'am, and they just sort of make do underneath, but they're not surfacing their difficulties because their difficulties aren't listened to or attended to. So there's this bit of a delay, and then things kind of don't happen, and then everybody's like, oh, well, this was bunk, it didn't work. Or people are saying, I run into this a lot in big companies, people say they're agile, but I get into their workspace, they're totally not agile. They're command and control. They're moving their engineers around like quote unquote horses, like property, and that's not agile.
That's not indeed. And both of the problems you refer to sound to me like cultural issues, right? It's the habits of the people, the inertia that you mentioned is for me a cultural a problem, and also indeed the disillusionment, the top-down mandate, like now everyone will be agile starting next Monday, and we have a big rollout. That's also a cultural problem that I recognize. But what about Erik? What have you seen in the Midwest as main obstacles?
I see those things as well. I think it was interesting when you said there's a lot of this agile stuff happening, but still I talk to friends, I talk to colleagues, we go into companies as consultants, and it's not really happening the way that I think the Agile community envisioned it, and I think there's missing pieces for how the Agile community has coached and consulted on this in the past decade that we're getting around to figuring out and correcting now. And like Management 3.0 is a great example. We never really had much to offer managers of big companies except some sort of platitudes like you should be a servant leader or something like that. But what does that really mean? What do you actually do every day? That kind of stuff was basically missing for a long time. So you end up with a lot of this. We're agile, we do daily stand-ups and unit tests, and that's kind of the extent of it, which is too bad. So I definitely see that. I think the other thing that's been interesting for me is a lot of people comment on in order to make Agile work in the whole organization, you have to have executive buy-in. And you could throw a dart on the internet and hit an article that says that you have to have executive buy-in in order to be Agile. I think that there's something almost intrinsically false about that. Every executive that I've talked to is already bought in. They want this. They see the benefits of other companies. They see things like short cycle time and delegating decision-making authority to the right level. This makes complete sense at the executive level, at the C level. It's really that level in between. It's the senior managers and directors and people like that don't really know how to make sense of this. And that's really where I see the most inertia and the most issues coming up in kind of day-to-day life of an Agile company.
All right. So I've heard similar messages in other countries. Other people said that usually the bottom and the top is not the problem, because at the bottom they have the practices, they know what to do. There's lots of books and courses about that. And at the top they totally understand the principles. Of course, they want higher productivity, 10 times productivity, and faster pivoting, etc. But then everything in between needs to know what that means for their jobs in the middle, and that is the big issue. Nobody can explain indeed what is the alternative for the performance appraisal? What is how else do we hire people and determine salaries, etc., etc.? Because we only have things that don't work, but nobody has suggestions for things that do work in an agile context. So, okay, that makes total sense. Both of you mentioned disillusionment, and that makes me recall the conversation I had with New York City just a week ago, where they said that there's a lot of skepticism towards Agile and Scrum approaches that have been badly implemented. Do you also sense that there's a disillusionment among the Agilists in the Agile communities themselves about things not working? Amy?
Well, recently I saw a promotion for an event in north of here. The woman who wrote Agile Retrospectives. They were talking. Yeah,
Esther,
she's famous.
Esther Derby, I think.
Yes, Esther. I'm really bad with names.
No problem.
They were talking about how Agile had been implemented so badly, and it had been used as justification for a whole bunch of things that are not really Agile, and they were holding this event to get back to the roots of Agile. So there's definitely a reflection of this impact within the Agile community. But it's not seen as a failure of Agile, it's seen as a corporate appropriation of Agile for bad stuff.
Yeah. You see that too, Eric?
Yeah, I do see that a lot. I see the companies saying that they want to be Agile, so that they hire somebody to help make them Agile, or they try to like install an Agile project. Like, hey, from now on we're going to do Scrum, or we're going to do Safe, or we're going to whatever the mandate is, but just trying to install it. And then almost right off the bat, what happens is they modify it to fit how their company works. And that's kind of a strange thing to do from an outsider's perspective. It makes a ton of sense if you're in the company, but it's a strange thing to do from a third-party point of view. And then things crumble and people become disillusioned and things like that. There's certainly some of that change management discipline that companies just don't typically have. How do you roll out a massive change like this? But I think in the Agile community, we have to take some responsibility for that ourselves too, because we simply haven't provided tools to people and companies for how to do this. And that's, I don't know, I kind of view that as part of our job too, and that's why I like bringing in things like the Lean Startup and Management 3.0 and all of these things that kind of fall under this Agile umbrella, if you will, and different tools for different parts of the organization, and kind of thinking about this holistically. That's what I think we need.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I agree there. People have to make ideas their own. I see things failing at big companies because they'll take a process and then they'll alter it to fit them. And we have the responsibility of helping them make alterations that are appropriate, in that they will fit the company, but they won't break the Agile. And I feel that often implementers are not giving enough feedback on how adjustments can be made and how adjustments might be breaking the Agile process, and how and why, either because they're not equipped to do so, or because they're not getting enough information back from their clients to understand what's going on.
Yeah, that's spot on.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a fascinating discussion. I could talk about this for hours, I could tell you. So I was just thinking while both of you were discussing bad implementations. I've just recently started exercising, and I think this is a great metaphor for Agile, because the purpose is to be healthy. At least for one of my goals is to be healthier as a human being. So I compare that's a nice metaphor with being Agile as an organization. And then you have all these specific things that you can do, like running. That's a specific sport that you could compare with Scrum, for example, as a specific method. And then it turns out that lots of people get injured from running. It is the most dangerous sport in the world, according to some. And there are actually doctors saying, don't run because it's bad for you.
Yeah. I don't run.
And that's amazing, because actually the human body was born to run. This is built into our system, but everyone is doing it so badly. I'm sorry, Amy?
You've read that book, Born to Run.
Yes, I read it. It's a great book. Yeah. So I saw the parallels with Agile everywhere. I mean, the people saying, "Don't do Scrum. It's not working. We tried and we failed. Everyone got injured."
Yeah.
And 75% of those who try it are failing. Well, 75% who try running get injured, but it doesn't mean that running doesn't work. Right? Okay, running doesn't work. Let's try cycling instead. So I think actually there's nothing new here. I think we make the same silly mistakes all the time as human beings, but it will be good to learn how to do this better.
Yeah.
So a different question. Well, my next question. What should I be aware of when I teach a class in the USA? Erik, you first, because I've been everywhere. What is special for the US? What do you think?
I think certainly in the Midwest, maybe one thing that's special is we should have a really good place in mind for happy hour after the workshop. It's nearly mandatory.
Yep. Right on.
Okay, and in Chicago, I know we need to have a deep pan pizza. I remember that from previous times. I just had to have those huge pizzas like this big.
Yeah, that's definitely a Chicago thing.
That's a Chicago thing. Yeah. Okay, well, I will keep that in mind. Happy hour after the workshop, possibly with a pizza added on top.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and Amy, what should I take into account when teaching a public class in San Francisco?
There will already be a fair amount of familiarity with Agile. I don't think that you can walk into any workplace in the tech industry in San Francisco and not have people already heard of Agile. They may also have caught the disillusionment. They may have only been exposed to bad Agile. And so you may need to address that damage first. Yeah. Also, if you're coming to the U.S., this doesn't have to do with San Francisco, except that a lot of people have moved out of San Francisco to these places. You should visit Austin and Portland. There is a great deal of opportunity in Austin and Portland, and many of my friends are moving there.
All right. Okay, good. Well, both of them are on my list, actually, on my wish list, not on my actual travel list, I must admit, because there was no time for additional cities, but Portland foremost. Many people tell me that I really should see Portland sometime, so it's very high on my wish list. Yeah,
I'll give you a reason to go. So obviously, I was
okay. Okay, people. Amy just had a tip. What's that, Amy?
So every year in Portland, there's a conference. I think you'd really enjoy it. It's called the World Domination Summit.
Okay.
And it's a bunch of entrepreneurs and a lot of people that work for themselves, but a lot of people I've found and met that work at companies as well that are kind of on a mission to change the world, to figure out how to serve and live what's the tagline? Live an extraordinary life in an ordinary world. And it's for me, it's the most impractical conference ever, but it's also the most engaging and inspirational. So almost no practical advice to take back to work, but very energized in the year after it.
All right. Yeah. When is the next one?
Next summer.
Next summer, next July.
Okay.
That sounds like a must go to at least once.
I think so, yeah.
So we need to wish you happy birthday, Erik.
Yes.
And thank you for making the time, especially on your birthday, and make sure everyone knows that the technical difficulties were on our end, not your end, for the original virtual coffee with Chicago. You brought a great beverage container. Shall we go around and show ours? I have a ceramic mug from my early experiments with making them from college.
Very nice.
Yes.
Very nice. I'm afraid I already brought back my coffee mug to the kitchen, and now I just have a glass of water.
This really is more of a hydration session, and Amy agrees. I saw hers beforehand. You want to show it off?
Yeah.
So this serious water.
This is a 1 liter bottle. I'm supposed to drink 3 of these a day, so I'm working through it.
Oh, wow.
Well, you might win the prize then, just for sheer size of the beverage container. We do have a giveaway of Jurgen's book signed, How to Change the World.
Awesome.
So you'll be getting that, and Erik will send you a bag of coffee.
Awesome.
Great. European coffee. I'm sure you will like that.
Yes.
So, okay, so I have 2 more questions, brief questions. What can the rest of the world learn from Chicago, Erik? Or the Midwest in general?
That is a good question.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I think the rest of the world can learn a great deal about work-life balance from people in the Midwest. We're a very community and family-oriented culture, and I think one of the things that I've found here that I really like is people at work genuinely care about other individuals as humans, not just as coworkers or employees. So there's a lot of really good kind of EQ work going on with managers and people willing to be vulnerable and open at work that I really liked in the Midwest.
Okay, I like that. All right, so they don't work themselves to death as they do in Silicon Valley, as Amy does, right?
They do. 50-hour weeks are normal here. People work crazy amounts, and then they start small businesses on the side. So I guess what you can learn from San Francisco is keep making experiments, even really, really out there experiments. I mean, you know, I'm living here in the Haight-Ashbury district. We still have hippies. We have the punks out here. California has a long, proud history of freakishness and experimentation, and it's working out for us really well, you know. We're on, I don't know how many booms we've had, but we keep making them and exporting them to the world, and it's working.
All right. Okay, I like that. So we need a bit of both. We need the rest of the world needs more time for experimentation, but also more time for the social stuff, right?
Yeah.
As the Midwest can teach us. All right, great.
Strikes me so, we have the other side of the lean startup movement represented too. Then pivoting as well as persevering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. So last question, actually that seems to be answered already. The last question is, how do I get people in the US involved in improving the world of work? But there's already a Global Domination conference that I hadn't heard of. So that's a great suggestion to be part of. But what else can we do to get people involved in improving the world of work? Do you have some ideas for me?
Yes, celebrate it. Collect success stories. Wherever you direct and broadcast expands.
Very good.
Yeah, I think well, I'd echo that, and the technique that I think has resonated most with managers here is examples. People are really interested in comparing what they do now to what other companies do. So kind of storytelling and examples of successes in other places have really resonated with people that I speak with.
Okay, that sounds good. Question, will they be interested in stories from other countries, do you think?
Definitely, at least out
I
here.
have lots of stories from elsewhere, particularly Europe, but also some from China and Australia and South America, and lots of places where I've been. Those are the stories that I can share.
Yes.
There's a large international community in San Francisco, including a lot of the kinds of people who go to the World Domination Summit, who are basically digital nomads. You know, they will visit San Francisco because there's business and connections here, but it's so expensive to live here that they maintain a steady apartment. They are in other countries, and they are very open to stories from other countries.
Yep.
All right. Awesome. So we're going to share some stories when I'm there. I'm eager to listen to hear more of your stories that I can then disseminate in other parts of the world, because that's how it works. I'm the global bumblebee. That's my role. I cross-pollinate across the whole world.
That's an excellent role to have. Yeah.
It's a privilege to be able to do that.
So let's just remind our viewers, Jurgen, when you're going to be in each city. You're coming to Chicago August 8th, and San Francisco is going to be August 13.
Correct, and we still have some room for people to sign up, so they're very welcome to join us.
I did post the registration link in the chat box on Webinar Jam. I will post it in the Q&A box on Google Hangouts as well. So everyone will have the link to register.
All right. Okay, great. So let's start wrapping up. Any last wise words for the audience from you, Amy, that you want to share?
Yes, if something doesn't work, try something else.
I like that. If it doesn't work, try something else. And they did that a lot of times in Silicon Valley. They're masters at that. That's great. Thank you. And Erik?
I'm not sure that I have any wise words, but I hope that people come and join us in Chicago.
Good. I will definitely join you over there, and hope to bring some people to our happy hour after the workshop.
Yes.
And let's recognize our local organizers. Erik is a local organizer for the Chicago workshop, and Elena Razvadua is the local organizer for San Francisco. So she is in Tanzania at the moment on a corporate job, doing some transformation on another continent, but she will return for the workshops. So local organizers are awesome. We work with them in every city and appreciate them very much.
Indeed, and I look forward to Elena's stories about Tanzania.
For sure. So thank you, everyone, and thanks to our audience. We are going to sign off now until next time. And Chicago and San Francisco, get ready for some new games, new management techniques. All right.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks, Erik. Much obliged. Thank you.
Bye.